Have you ever wondered why so many men in the quiet of their nights feel a great emptiness, a hollow space that no amount of pleasure, success, or validation seems to fill? There exists a secret rhythm within the soul of man, a hidden energy, powerful enough to create life itself. And yet, most of humanity spends their lives draining it away, unaware of what they are truly losing. Semen retention is not merely a practice, it is a pilgrimage into the deepest corridors of your unconscious. It is not about suppression, it is about transmutation, a transformation of raw, chaotic energy into conscious power. To embark on this path is to walk between the worlds of the animal and the divine. The first stage is the awakening. It begins in confusion, perhaps even guilt. A man begins to see that he has been enslaved by his own impulses. He sees the strings of his desires, and for the first time he pulls them loose. In this stage, the ego trembles. The shadow, that dark part of the psyche Jung spoke of, begins to stir. You start to see your hidden self in the mirror of temptation. It is uncomfortable but necessary. Then comes the struggle. Every cell in your body screams for the old pleasure. The mind will whisper that you are denying your nature. This is the test of will, the war between instinct and intention. Jung once said, "No tree can grow to heaven unless its roots reach down to hell." In this stage, you descend into your own darkness. You face your inner demons. The energy that once enslaved you now becomes your battlefield. If you endure, you enter the third stage, transmutation. Here, the energy that once sought release begins to rise through you. Your thoughts sharpen, your eyes gain a strange depth, and your presence grows magnetic. The libido, which Jung described as the psychic energy of life itself, begins to ascend from the lower realms of instinct toward the higher realms of creativity and purpose. What once weakened you now fuels your vision. The fourth stage is expansion. You feel clarity. The world appears more vivid. You are no longer tossed by emotion. You ride it. Your masculine essence begins to harmonize with the feminine forces of intuition and feeling. This is not mere celibacy. It is integration, the uniting of opposites. You realize that you are not denying pleasure, but redefining it. True pleasure is no longer in the release, but in the mastery of energy, in creation rather than consumption. And finally, the fifth stage, transcendence. This is where few ever reach. The energy within you becomes light. Not metaphorical light, but a real illumination of the spirit. You begin to perceive the divine order behind your desires, the archetypal purpose of your masculinity. You become a vessel of creation, not depletion. You realize that semen retention was never about controlling lust. It was about reclaiming your soul from the chaos of unconscious living. So, the secret is this. Semen retention is not about what you withhold, but about what you awaken. It is not the denial of pleasure, but the discovery of power. You are not simply retaining seed, you are cultivating spirit. And when that energy is finally mastered, you no longer chase meaning, because you are meaning itself. In the beginning of this journey, something subtle yet profound occurs, an awakening. It is not loud or dramatic, but more like a slow illumination spreading through the mind. A man begins to sense that the way he has been living, the way he has been seeking pleasure, has kept him trapped in a loop of unconscious repetition. He realizes that every impulsive act, every indulgence is not freedom, it is compulsion. This first stage of semen retention is therefore not about physical control. It is about psychological revelation. You begin to see the invisible strings that pull at your behavior, the patterns formed in the depths of your unconscious. Carl Jung once said that until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. This truth lies at the very heart of the first stage. When a man begins to retain his vital energy, he is not simply abstaining from release. He is forcing himself to confront his own shadow. The shadow in Jungian psychology is the collection of everything within us that we repress, deny, or fear to acknowledge. It contains the primitive urges, the lusts, the aggression, and the shame that civilization teaches us to hide. But what we hide does not disappear. It grows stronger in the dark, shaping our desires in secret. Semen retention tears away that curtain. It brings you face to face with your repressed instincts, not to condemn them, but to understand them. The sexual impulse, when seen through the lens of the psyche, is not merely biological. It is spiritual, creative, and deeply symbolic. It represents the raw energy of life itself, the same force that drives growth, ambition, and transformation. Yet when this force is squandered unconsciously, it leaves a man weak, restless, and spiritually hollow. Retention then becomes an act of rebellion against unconscious living, a reclaiming of authority over one's own life force. This awakening is uncomfortable because it demands honesty. You begin to see how often your decisions were governed not by reason but by craving. You recognize how easily pleasure masqueraded as purpose. This is the stage where many turn away, because seeing oneself without the mask is unsettling. But if you stay with this discomfort, something extraordinary happens. Awareness begins to burn away confusion. You start to feel the stirrings of genuine power, not dominance over others, but mastery over self. And here lies the paradox. In withholding what once enslaved you, you begin to experience true freedom. The same energy that once pulled you downward now becomes a source of upward motion, a quiet, centered strength that others can sense even before you speak. You no longer chase pleasure to fill emptiness. You build presence to express fullness. Every awakening begins with a reckoning. To retain your energy is to face yourself, entirely and without excuse. It is the first act of inner sovereignty, and when you finally dare to look into your own darkness, you discover that within it lies the light you've been searching for all along. After the awakening comes the struggle, a stage as ancient as man himself. It is here that awareness meets resistance, and the battle between instinct and will begins. Once you've seen the truth of your own compulsions, you cannot return to ignorance, yet your body, your habits, and your desires will fight to drag you back into the familiar. This is the crucible in which real transformation takes place. It is not merely about resisting physical temptation. It is a confrontation between two dimensions of the self, the primal and the conscious, the automatic and the intentional. In Jungian terms, this is the descent into the underworld of the psyche, what the alchemists called nigredo, the blackening. It is a psychological death, a necessary breakdown of old patterns before new order can be born. When you commit to semen retention, you are no longer running from your instincts but standing before them as their master in training. Every urge that arises, every impulse that tempts you, becomes a mirror reflecting your inner chaos. You begin to understand that desire itself is not the enemy. It is the teacher. It reveals where you are weakest, most fragmented, most enslaved. This struggle is not pleasant. It will test your patience, your resolve, and your honesty. You will feel tension build like fire in your chest and mind. You will question whether the practice is worth it, whether it even makes sense to resist what seems so natural. Yet this conflict is sacred. It is the very process through which the unconscious is refined into consciousness. Without tension, there is no transformation, just stagnation. Jung observed that all psychological growth is born from the conflict of opposites, and it is through enduring that conflict consciously that a new synthesis emerges. The man who perseveres through this stage begins to see that pleasure was never the problem. His relationship to it was, what he sought in release was not satisfaction, but escape, a momentary silence from the noise within. Now by retaining, he learns to face that noise, to sit in the storm of his own mind without flinching. Gradually, the fire that once burned destructively begins to warm him from within. Energy that used to dissolve in moments of indulgence now accumulates, thickens, and sharpens his focus. He becomes more alert, more alive, more present. And yet what truly defines this stage is not abstinence but alchemy. You are not simply denying yourself. You are transforming yourself. Every urge is a spark of creative energy, waiting to be redirected into thought, action, and purpose. Each temptation resisted becomes a small victory of consciousness over chaos. Through this inner battle, the man begins to feel the emergence of something new, a deeper integrity, a clearer sense of self, a strength that cannot be faked. To struggle is to evolve. The pain of discipline becomes the birthplace of wisdom. And when you finally realize that every desire you conquer adds to your power, you understand the real meaning of mastery, not the absence of temptation, but the presence of self-command. As the struggle subsides and discipline takes root, a profound shift begins to occur within the man who practices retention. This is the stage of transmutation, where raw, primal energy no longer dissipates, but rises through the layers of his being, refined and elevated. Carl Jung referred to libido not merely as sexual desire, but as the psychic energy that fuels all forms of life, creativity, and transformation. This energy, once scattered and spent in unconscious release, is now consciously conserved and directed, becoming a catalyst for inner growth and vitality. In this process, the sexual impulse transforms from a mere biological drive into a sacred force, a fire that can light the path to higher states of awareness. The body, once a battlefield of conflict and craving, becomes a vessel through which energy flows upward, activating the mind, the spirit, and the very essence of being. The tension that once threatened to consume is now transmuted into clarity, confidence, and creative power. The man no longer reacts to desire as a blind instinct, but harnesses it as a source of intentional expression. This transmutation is a psychological and spiritual alchemy. Just as ancient alchemists sought to transform base metals into gold, the man practicing retention works to transform base impulses into noble qualities. The creative force that once sought expression only through fleeting pleasure now becomes the wellspring of art, ambition, and purpose. The libido fuels not only the body, but the imagination and the will. Philosophically, this stage signifies a profound realization. Desire is not the enemy of spiritual growth, but its raw material. To deny desire outright is to deny a fundamental aspect of human nature. Instead, to transform desire, to channel it consciously, is to live in harmony with one's deepest nature rather than in conflict. This shift reflects Jung's concept of individuation, the integration and harmonization of all parts of the self, including the shadow. Sexual energy, when mastered and refined, becomes a unifying force, bridging the instincts and the intellect, the personal and the universal. The man experiences a new sense of wholeness and presence. His thoughts sharpen, his emotions deepen, his creative impulse awakens. The energy that once scattered like wind is now a steady flame, illuminating his path forward. This stage is often accompanied by a new magnetism, a presence that others unconsciously notice. It is the expression of a soul aligned with its purpose, a psyche that has begun to harmonize its inner opposites. The power of transmutation does not come from external achievements, but from an inner transformation, an alchemy invisible to the eye, but palpable in the aura of one who has mastered himself. To reach this point requires patience and persistence, but it offers a profound reward. The discovery that your greatest resource is not external validation or momentary pleasure, but the energy you cultivate within. When you learn to transmute your desires into creative force, you no longer chase fleeting highs. You become the source of enduring vitality. This is the essence of mastery, not the absence of desire, but the conscious direction of it. The transmuted energy fuels not only your body but your soul, enabling you to create, to lead, and to live with purpose. Remember this: true power lies not in suppression, but in transformation. When you elevate your deepest urges into conscious energy, you step into the full measure of your humanity, and the journey becomes not about losing something, but about gaining everything. As the inner energy begins to rise and transmute, a new phase unfolds, one that brings a deeper, more subtle transformation. This stage moves beyond the mere management of impulse or the redirection of desire. It is the integration of opposites within the psyche, a harmonizing of what Jung described as the masculine and feminine principles. To truly understand this stage, one must first recognize that the human psyche is not a simple singular force, but a complex interplay of contrasting energies. The path of semen retention, when followed deeply, becomes a journey into the heart of these dualities. In Jungian psychology, the masculine principle is often associated with will, logic, action, and outward assertion, qualities traditionally seen as strength, drive, and purpose. The feminine principle, on the other hand, embodies intuition, feeling, receptivity, and inner wisdom. These forces exist in all individuals, regardless of gender, and their balance is crucial for psychological wholeness. The man who begins this stage of retention has already wrestled with the animalistic and instinctual parts of himself. Now he faces the challenge of uniting these instinctual energies with the deeper, more intuitive aspects of his being. This integration is neither easy nor automatic. Society often teaches men to deny or suppress their feminine side, labeling emotions, vulnerability, and intuition as weaknesses. Yet Jung argued that to deny the feminine within is to remain incomplete. to live in a fractured state of being. The process of semen retention invites a man to embrace this wholeness, to allow the fierce drive of masculine energy to blend harmoniously with the soft power of the feminine. This blending fosters a profound sense of inner peace and magnetism, a presence that radiates strength without aggression, confidence without arrogance. Psychologically, this means moving beyond the polarity of repression and indulgence. It means recognizing that neither denying desire nor surrendering to it leads to true fulfillment. Instead, the energy once wasted in chasing pleasure becomes a dynamic force that nourishes both mind and heart. The man begins to understand that his sexual energy is not a liability, but a bridge connecting his conscious and unconscious selves. This realization transforms how he relates to himself and to others. His desires are no longer battles to be won or avoided, but conversations to be held within. Philosophically, this stage represents the reconciliation of dualities that have plagued humanity for centuries: mind and body, spirit and flesh, action and contemplation. It echoes the alchemical marriage, the conjunctio, where opposing forces unite to produce something greater than their parts. When a man integrates his masculine and feminine energies, he no longer lives in fragmented conflict, but in harmonious balance. This unity fosters creativity, empathy, and resilience, allowing him to engage the world with both strength and compassion. In practical terms, this integration manifests as emotional intelligence and authentic presence. The man who has reached this stage no longer feels compelled to prove his masculinity through domination or suppression. Instead, he embodies a calm confidence that attracts rather than repels. His relationships deepen, not because he seeks control, but because he connects from a place of genuine understanding and openness. His creative work, leadership, and daily interactions reflect this balance, enriched by the full spectrum of his energies. Sexually, this integration changes the nature of desire itself. No longer frantic or compulsive, desire becomes an expression of connection and sacred exchange. It transcends mere physical gratification and enters the realm of meaningful encounter. The retention of semen is no longer a struggle or a denial, but a choice, a conscious act of honoring the life force and directing it toward authentic intimacy and creation. This stage also reveals a profound truth about power. It is not about force or domination, but about alignment and flow. True power arises when the energies within are balanced and integrated, when will and intuition move together rather than in opposition. This power is subtle but undeniable, felt as presence, purpose, and a magnetic ability to influence without coercion. The integration of masculine and feminine within also opens the door to deeper self-awareness. The man becomes aware of his own inner landscape with greater clarity, noticing how thoughts, emotions, and desires interweave. He learns to listen to his body as much as his mind, recognizing the wisdom that arises when both are in dialogue. This heightened awareness fosters greater compassion for himself and others as he sees the complexity and nuance in human nature. To arrive at this stage requires patience, courage, and continued commitment. It means walking beyond the binaries that have long defined human experience and embracing complexity without fear. It means accepting that power and vulnerability are not enemies but partners in the dance of life. And it means understanding that the journey toward wholeness is ongoing, never complete, yet infinitely rewarding. Remember this: the true mastery of your energy is not in domination, but in harmony. When you integrate your inner opposites, you become whole. And in that wholeness lies the foundation for a life of depth, creativity, and authentic connection. The path of semen retention is not a denial of desire, but a sacred journey toward unity, within yourself, with others, and with the deeper currents of life itself. This is the transformation that changes everything. Will you answer the call to integrate, to harmonize, and to awaken your fullest potential? The power lies not in resisting who you are, but in embracing all that you are meant to become. At last, after the awakening, the struggle, the transmutation, and the integration, there emerges a final stage, one of profound sovereignty and self-mastery. This stage is not merely the culmination of a practice or a discipline, but the birth of a new way of being. It is the moment when a man no longer needs to fight his nature, nor to wield his energy like a weapon or a tool. Instead, He embodies a presence so complete, so deeply rooted in himself, that his very existence radiates power without effort. This is the stage where the path of semen retention reveals its ultimate gift, the full flowering of individual sovereignty. Sovereignty, in the Jungian sense, is more than autonomy or independence. It is the integration of all aspects of the self, the conscious and unconscious, the light and shadow, the masculine and feminine, into a coherent whole. It is the state in which a man commands his inner kingdom with wisdom, courage, and compassion. To be sovereign is to be the undivided master of one's own psyche and body, to no longer be buffeted by external forces or internal chaos. This kind of sovereignty arises not from control over others, but from mastery over oneself. Semen retention, when embraced fully, becomes the crucible in which this sovereignty is forged. It trains the individual to steward his vital energy with care and intention, to move beyond reactive behavior into conscious action. The energy that once dissipated in fleeting gratification is now held as a sacred trust, fueling creativity, focus, and the ability to navigate life's complexities with clarity. In this stage, a man no longer chases pleasure. He embodies a deeper source of fulfillment that arises from alignment with his true nature. This sovereignty is inherently psychological. It means that a man has integrated his shadow, confronted his fears, and embraced his vulnerabilities. He no longer needs to hide or deny parts of himself, for he recognizes that wholeness includes the light and the dark. Jung famously said that one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. The sovereign man has made this darkness conscious and invited it to be part of his strength rather than his weakness. At the same time, sovereignty is deeply sexual and spiritual. The retention of semen is not a denial of sexuality, but a sacred discipline that honors life's generative force. This force, once scattered and wasted, is now cultivated and transformed into a powerful current that nourishes body, mind, and spirit. Sexual energy becomes a source of vitality that underpins not only physical health, but also emotional resilience and spiritual depth. The man who embodies this power is magnetic, not because of aggression or dominance, but because of authenticity and presence. Philosophically, this stage speaks to the human quest for meaning and self-realization. It is a return to the archetype of the king or sovereign, the figure who rules with justice, wisdom, and compassion. This archetype is not about external power or conquest, but about inner authority and balance. The journey through semen retention mirrors this archetypal path, moving a man from fragmentation and chaos to order and integration. In this final stage, he becomes the ruler of his inner world, capable of navigating the outer world with grace and effectiveness. This sovereignty also carries responsibility. To hold such power without humility is to risk corruption or tyranny. True sovereignty requires ongoing self-awareness and the willingness to face oneself continually. It is not a static achievement but a dynamic process. The sovereign man knows that mastery is a lifelong journey, marked by growth, challenge, and renewal. Practically, this stage manifests as a profound calm and confidence. The man is no longer driven by the urgent demands of craving or fear. Instead, he moves through life with intentionality and poise. His relationships deepen because he relates not from neediness or control, but from genuine presence. His creativity flourishes because he channels his energy with precision and clarity. And his influence is felt because he embodies the integration and power that inspire trust and respect. In essence, this stage of semen retention reveals a universal truth about human potential, that the true source of power lies within. It is the power of conscious choice, the power to transform impulses into wisdom, chaos into order, and fragmentation into wholeness. It is the power of becoming fully oneself, a journey that requires courage, discipline, and openness to the unknown. Consider this: each moment of restraint, each conscious choice to hold and direct your vital energy is an act of sovereignty. It is a declaration that you will no longer be ruled by unconscious impulses or external circumstances. You are the master of your fate, the architect of your soul. And in that mastery lies a freedom so profound that it reshapes not only your life but the world around you. The question remains, will you claim this sovereignty? Will you embrace the full journey, the awakening, the struggle, the transmutation, the integration, and step into the power that is your birthright. The path is challenging, but the reward is transformation beyond measure. To master yourself is to master your destiny. Remember this: sovereignty is not given. It is earned through the alchemy of discipline, awareness, and courage. When you reach this stage, you stand not just as a man who controls his energy, but as a being who has awakened to the fullness of his humanity. And that ultimately changes everything.